Hello. Welcome. Welcome. Hi, Patrick Kelley. I'm a distinguished architect, which still is the coolest title at Zoom. Just going to say it. If you haven't figured out the day's topic, it's not Prezi, by the way. If you guessed, it's not Prezi. It is, and it's Zoom and Teams together. Your favorite and my favorite topic. If you didn't know, I've been here for about 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was at Microsoft for about 14 years. So I've dealt with every UCaaS iteration between LCS 2003 and Teams. And now at Zoom, I talk to a lot of customers about the Microsoft Teams and Zoom story. If you haven't figured out from your short time here or your long time here, I have no idea how long you've worked here. We are competing against Microsoft, right? And let's be completely transparent. Everyone's a Microsoft customer. 99.86% of the world is Microsoft customers. I made that stat up. I have no idea what it is. I really don't. It just seems like most of the time I'm talking to a customer, they're a Microsoft customer. Rarely do I walk in to a customer, they're like, yeah, we're all Red Hat and Google here. There's probably a couple companies like that. I just haven't talked to them yet, right? I talk to typically Microsoft customers. I talk to Zoom customers. So how do we get this conversation? How do we tell this story? Because you better be good at it. You're going to tackle it a lot. Whether you're an SMB or enterprises, it does not matter. Your customers are probably going to be using Microsoft Teams, if not Microsoft Suite. Rarely are you going to be competing against Google and Android OS. Right? It could happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, but 0.14% of the time it's going to happen. The rest of the time, the 99.86% of the time, you're going to be competing with Microsoft. And how do you tell that story? Because there's two different levels of a Microsoft customer. One, know this, and we're not going to get into a licensing discussion. Teams is included with every level of licensing in the Microsoft world. It doesn't matter, F1, E3, E1, E5, it doesn't matter, A3, it's included. It's literally included with every single level of Microsoft licensing. So you better be able to tell that story of, you already own Teams because it's included in your license. Why do you need Zoom? Why do you need Zoom? This is a story you better be able to nail 100%. And this is the purpose of the video. You don't have to say it like me, but you better say it like you, right? Because you're going to have to say it a lot. And how do we tell the story? Let's kind of dive deep into it. And we're going to tell some different parts of the story of how Zoom and Teams work together. First, we have to have a UCaaS discussion. And what is UCaaS? Everyone's thinking, Patrick, UCaaS is Unified Collaboration as a Service. You wouldn't be wrong. You'd be right. Other people are saying, wait a second, I just dropped something fidgety. I thought it was Unified Communication as a Service. Again, you wouldn't be wrong. You'd be right. But there's a difference. In my mind, there's a difference between collaboration and communication. And this is where is an important story to tell when you're with a Teams customer. A Microsoft Teams customer probably utilized Teams initially for collaboration. And what is collaboration? It's the ability to have instant messaging, persistent chat. It's the ability to have asynchronous collaboration between individuals and teams to get work done. That's collaboration. The whole reason Teams is here is because Slack was first. Microsoft had Skype for business. It did not do collaboration. It was real-time instant messaging, real-time audio, real-time video. It was not collaboration. It was communication. So when you walk into a Teams shop, they're probably using Teams right now. Not all the time, but the majority of the time, they're using Teams for collaboration. There's instant messaging. They're persistent chatting. Is that a word? They're utilizing persistent chat. They're utilizing Office 365 through the lens of Teams. And let's be real honest, Teams has zero data. Does that shock you? Teams has no data in it. Teams is a window into everything Microsoft Office 365. Let's walk through it a couple of times. A couple of examples. When you're instant messaging somebody in Teams, you see the message in Teams. Where's it stored? It's stored in Exchange. When you're utilizing, by the way, in your mailbox, a hidden folder. You can't find it. It's hidden. When you're chatting with somebody in a channel within Teams, where's that stored? Exchange. When you share a file in Teams, where's that stored? Two different places. SharePoint or OneDrive. When you're looking up contacts in Teams, where's that stored? See where I'm going? Azure. When you're looking up calendar, where's that stored? Exchange. Are you seeing the trend here? Teams is nothing other than a window to everything else. It contains nothing. It's literally just a portal. That's collaboration. And by the way, Teams does it really, really well. Really well. As good, if not better than Slack, some would say. So when you're walking into a Microsoft customer, you're going to have this UCaaS discussion because you're going to have to talk about collaboration, what that means, and communication. What does that mean? Communication is everything real time. Everything real time is, you can instant message real time. That's communication. You're having a one-on-one chat. That's communication. Audio, talk to somebody. Video somebody. Audio, video, have a video and meeting chat. Webinars, breakout rooms, Zoom phone. That's all communication. What? And that's the UCaaS as a whole. I'm under no disillusion that Teams can do a lot of communication things and Zoom can do a lot of collaboration things. That's the point of having this UCaaS discussion when you walk into a customer. You have to find out what tools they're using for collaboration and communication before you can sell them anything. You have to discover what they're doing. You have to discover their pain points. You have to discover how you can help. That's the point of having the UCaaS discussion. You define UCaaS, then you ask and sit back and listen. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, what are you using for UCaaS today? What are some of your struggles with UCaaS? What are some of your pain points? Your job is to discover their UCaaS strategy. Maybe they have a UCaaS roadmap. You don't know. That's the whole point. Have to have that discussion. And once you have that discussion, once you've highlighted some of the pain points that they're having, that they're wanting to fix, some gaps maybe in their UCaaS story, this is when you can start defining the solution. Because everyone has different needs. Everyone has different workflows. And Teams might not be perfect for everyone. And let's extend that a little bit. Zoom might not be perfect for every single solution. But together, we can have this story. A Zoom and Microsoft story complete the UCaaS stack. We do a lot of things at Zoom that Microsoft can't do. And Microsoft, full disclosure, does a lot of things that we can't do. Yet, right? Utopia would be if we could all deploy one application that could do everything perfectly. We could deploy one application that does everything perfectly. We can train on one app. We can admin one app. We could buy one app. We could support one app. Every CIO and CTO in the world would say, hey, one app and it does everything perfectly. We're not quite there, right? We're not quite there. So we need to showcase how Zoom and Microsoft add value, add business value and user value to their UCaaS story. Because I can tell you right now, Microsoft can't do everything perfectly. That's where we come in because we can do a lot of things perfectly in the UCaaS world. That's where we complement that story. We're not talking about price right this second. We're talking about adding value. We're talking about Zoom as a platform, Zoom as an ecosystem, not as an application. Because once again, Susie in HR works differently than Bob in accounting, works differently than Steve in sales. That's different needs, different workflows, and not one tool works perfectly for everyone. You're going to need different tools to complete your UCaaS strategy. Understand the strategy, understand the story, understand the customer need, add value. That's what Zoom does. So let's dive into some of those discussions you're going to have. I'm going to take a little drink here. 2 types of communication collaboration. There are 2 types. I just told you about Susie in HR working differently than Bob in accounting, working differently than Steve in sales. Let's walk through a workflow. Let's walk through a use case. Let's walk through a business value add from Zoom into a Teams atmosphere. 2 different levels of communication, collaboration. One is internal. One is primarily you're going to be working internally if you're, let's just take an example. Let's say we're Susie in HR. Susie in HR is doing a bunch of HR stuff. That's her job. Talking internally to individuals. Talking internally to other HR colleagues, coworkers. Susie in HR predominantly works internally. And let's just take an example of where Susie works. Acme Corporation, Contoso Corporation, doesn't matter. Acme Corporation is a full Microsoft shop. They own E3, E5. It doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter what they own. They have Teams. Teams is included. So don't put a lot of emphasis on what license level they own, because honestly, it's inconsequential. They're going to buy Microsoft because they need Microsoft stuff. They need email. They need Office 365. They need Active Directory. They need identity. They need authentication. They need file repository. We don't do any of that. Zoom doesn't do that. We're not in the Zoom productivity business. We're in the UCaaS business, and we do UCaaS stuff. They own Teams. Acme Corporation owns Teams because they needed productivity stuff. They need Microsoft stuff. So they comes with Teams, and it's included, so they're going to naturally use it. I don't blame them for it. It's included with their license. So they're utilizing Teams for collaboration internally. Actually, a really good tool for that, right? Susie in HR, let's walk through the workflow. Susie in HR is collaborating with Bob in accounting. She's chatting with Bob in accounting. And they're collaborating on a document. And pretty soon, Susie in HR says, you know what, Bob, I'm tired of talking, tired of typing. Can I share my screen? We can work on this file together. This is the workflow. 2 coworkers have 2 choices. They're internally collaborating. Susie in HR has 2 choices. She could use Teams and or Zoom to share her screen and collaborate with Bob. Let's walk through the realistic workflow. Let's be a little pragmatic here. Susie is in Teams already chatting with Bob. For her to share her screen, literally is 1 mouse click. Actually 2. She starts a meeting with Bob. Bob accepts. She shares her screen. It's 2 mouse clicks. That's a pretty effective workflow, right? I can't blame Susie in HR for using Teams. It's the most effective workflow for her need. Her workflow is effectively using Teams for what she's doing. Could she get out of Teams? Could you say, hey, Bob, in accounting, I'm going to get out of Teams. I'm going to start up Zoom. I'm going to start a Zoom meeting, and then I'm going to invite you to the Zoom meeting, wait for you to accept the Zoom meeting, join the Zoom meeting, then share my screen in Zoom. Could she do that? 1,000% she could. Is it an effective way to work? It is not. So in that workflow, Zoom is not adding value to that workflow. The point is, though, how much money did Susie in HR generate by calling Bob in accounting internally? Boop. 0. There were $0 generated from Susie in HR sharing her Teams screen with Bob in accounting. In fact, it costs you money because you're paying them both a salary. Valuable work, but not work that's revenue generating. That communication between Bob and Susie did not generate any revenue. It costs money. Again, valuable stuff that you need, but it didn't generate revenue. Let's go to the second example. Let's go to Steve in sales. Steve in sales works differently than Susie in HR, works differently than Bob in accounting. He has different needs. He has different workflows. He needs different tools than Bob and Susie. Think about Steve's workflow day. Think about what Steve is doing as a salesperson. Who's he talking to? Internally, a little bit. His coworkers, sure. But Steve is paid to do one thing. Steve is paid to sell stuff. And when he wants to sell stuff, he's got to talk to three different people. Vendors, partners, customers. Those are the people that Steve is talking to that are writing checks for the product that Steve is selling at Acme Contoso Corporation. Every one of those customers, vendors, partners are external communication, external collaboration. He has a different workflow than Susie, who is internal. Steve is external, having meetings every day, having phone calls every day, 5 days a week, 365 days a year. Steve doesn't stop working, right? The point is, he needs a different tool. And what tool is best for generating revenue externally? Zoom. 100% Zoom is a more effective tool externally than Teams. Zoom has a higher quality standard than Teams. Zoom is easier to use than Teams. Zoom was quicker, more effective, and more collaborative than Teams. You don't have to believe me. Believe the 500 million people that chose Zoom to be their UCaaS external collaboration tool. Now, every single call that Steve is having with customers, vendors, partners is a revenue-generating call. Every call, he's going to try to generate revenue. That's the point. Could he use Teams? Could Steve in sales use Teams externally? He could. Is it as effective? No. Is it as high quality? No. Is it as high fidelity? No. That's the point. Every revenue-generating call that you do better be of the highest quality and the easiest of use. That is Zoom all day long. That's why people that are customer-facing will choose Zoom over Teams every time. Revenue-generating communication. The best workflow, why you need Zoom in addition to Teams. Look at all those people meeting. Look at all those people meeting. Two kinds of workflows, right? We have small meetings, we have large meetings. That's pretty much it. What do you consider a large meeting? That's a better question. What do you consider large? What does your customer consider a large meeting? In the Microsoft world, a large meeting was considered to be 250 or more. If you had a large meeting, you couldn't use Skype. If you had a large meeting, you couldn't use Teams. You had to use another product, like a broadcasting type product, because Microsoft at the time didn't even have a webinar type product. And then Zoom came along and blew everyone out of the water like, hey, by the way, we consider large meetings 1,000. 1,000's drastically different than 250. Microsoft answered and said, hey, we have 300 now. And everyone's like, do you know how math works? Because that's not 1,000. That's 300, better than 250, not quite as good as Zoom. Microsoft then redelivered their stance on it and said, hey, large meetings are now 1,000. Shocking how they came up with that exact same number that Zoom has. The point is, Zoom was architected for large meetings. From the data center all the way to the client, Zoom is more effective at large meetings than Teams. You're going to find that people that are collaborating with Teams, remember collaboration communication, are using Teams for smaller type meetings. 88.76% of your meetings are 8 people or less. I made that stat up. I have no idea what it is. I don't know. The majority of my meetings are probably, 10 people or less. Let's be completely honest. But when you have a large meeting, it's typically a lot more important than those 8 and 10 person meetings, right? When you have a large meeting, you need the best tool for the job. You need the tool that was architected for large meetings. You need the tool that doesn't change quality from 2 people to 1,000 people. You need the tool with the best quality, fidelity, and collaboration possible. What is that tool? I think you know the answer. It is Zoom 100% of the time. I've been watching a lot of Star Wars with my son lately, so all my analogies seem to be more Jedi related. So use your Jedi powers to showcase how large meetings work. Your Jedi powers, by the way, if you're an SE, your proof of concept, your POC. Your POC is your best friend. Why? Because it'll prove to you what you're saying is true. When you use Zoom for large meetings, ask somebody to say, hey, do 1,000 person large meeting in Zoom. Then please do a large meeting in Teams, and you tell me which one your users who attended and presented liked more. Which one was more effective? Which one was higher quality? Which one was higher fidelity? Which one was more productive? They're going to land on Zoom here. They're going to land on Zoom. Large meetings, number 2 reason to complete that UCaaS stack with Teams and Zoom. What happens when you have more than 1,000 people? What do you do then? What's your answer then? I think you know because it's on the screen. Webinars. Webinars is what you use when you have 1,001 people, right? When you go beyond a large meeting, what's your solution? It's webinars. How long has Zoom been doing webinars? 4 years. Full disclosure, Microsoft didn't even have webinars. Through every single iteration of their UCaaS platform, from LCS all the way to Teams, they didn't have webinars. They do now. Why? Because Zoom has it. Teams and Zoom obviously started during the pandemic competing with each other a lot more heatedly than before. And all of a sudden people are like, oh, I love webinars in Zoom. And Microsoft's like, oh yeah, that's probably pretty cool. We don't have that yet. They do have it now. But it's years behind in innovation, years behind in quality, years behind in functions. What's your choice here when you are a Zoom and or a Teams customer? Which tool are you going to use for webinars? What do you think? The answer is Zoom. Again, use your Jedi mind powers here. Actually, not even mind powers. It's just Jedi powers. Use your Jedi powers to showcase the power of Zoom webinars by doing what? POC it. Ask somebody, and I know this is a big ask, don't get me wrong. Ask somebody to do a 10,000 person webinar in Teams, and then please do a 10,000 person webinar in Zoom. And you tell me which one your users and attendees prefer. Which one had the highest quality? Which one had the most functions? Which one was more productive? Which one was more collaborative? Zoom's going to win this every time. Webinars. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Zoom Phone. Zoom Phone. Light years ahead of Microsoft Teams Phone. In functions, in administration, in operation, in usability. Zoom Phone blows Microsoft Teams out of the water when it comes to this. Again, your POC is your Jedi trick. We're not going to dive too deep into Zoom Phone. I'll let Colby and Graham take care of that, right? And Ian and all those guys take care of Zoom Phone. But the point is that Zoom Phone is an extension of UCaaS. Zoom views phone differently than Microsoft does. We see it as an extension of UCaaS. Right? Not only from just an overall philosophy of PSTN, of phone usage, but of implementation. Think about this. How many countries does Zoom Phone have? Native PSTN offering. How many countries? Last I heard it was like 49-ish, right? We have roadmaps to like 70 and 90 is what I've been told. We view PSTN differently than Microsoft. Microsoft, for years, I was trying to sell Microsoft Phone for a long time. It was very hard. I wasn't very successful at it. Years, only had 11 countries that they covered from a native PSTN perspective. Then Zoom came along, right? And they had 49. And Microsoft's like, oh, we have 15 now. They're like, again, do you know how math works? And then they had 20 and 25. I think they're up to 33 as of this last time I checked. 33. Still not anywhere close to Zoom. Microsoft takes a different philosophy is because phone is hard. Phone, and I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox here. Phone is probably the most difficult thing to implement from a UCaaS perspective. Debatable? Not really. Video is hard too. I get it, but that's a network side. To deploy Teams video is nothing. You deploy the Teams client, it's done. To make it work effectively, you have to obviously really be an effective way to administer your network. Real-time latency, right? Jitter. All that stuff that you need from a networking perspective to get perfect for video to work perfectly. Zoom Phone has a lot more. Phone in general has a lot more functionality, modalities, administration, operation, deployment things that you need to do to get it to work right. Call flows and call queues and IVRs and auto attendance on top of the network, right? Numbers, calling plans. It's hard. In the Microsoft world, it is. That's why there's partners in the Microsoft world. That's why there are so many partners in the Microsoft world. The modalities, the Unify Squares, the Cardinals, the Converge Ones, all those exist solely because Microsoft Teams phone system is hard and Microsoft doesn't want to do it. They want their partners to do it. They don't even want you to do it as a customer because you don't have the horsepower in your organization to do it correctly. You need a partner. Zoom takes a different stance on that. Do we have professional services? Yes. But do we also effectively design it so it could be easy enough for you to do without vast Zoom phone technology knowledge? Yes. Different paradigm shift. We can dive deep into PSTN and the provider exchange and direct routing. Not the point of this conversation, but no, Zoom Phone is why you choose Zoom over Teams for communication. To have effective conferences, you need effective rooms. Zoom Rooms is drastically different than Microsoft Teams Rooms from an administration perspective, a deployment perspective, and a usability perspective. Zoom Rooms has more functions and modalities than Microsoft Teams Rooms. Zoom Rooms is easier to admin than Microsoft Teams Rooms. Zoom Rooms easier to deploy than Microsoft Teams Rooms. Easier to troubleshoot. All these things that make an effective conferencing room. Ease of use, the number one thing that customers complain about when walking into a room. They want it to be easy. They want Susie in HR to walk into a room and be able to hit one button that says join and everything just lights up. You don't need IT to come in and turn on a screen or a monitor or a microphone or a speaker. Susie in HR just walks in and the Zoom room effectively does it themselves. That's the goal, to make the extension of the Zoom client into the Zoom phone, into the Zoom room. Again, you want to do a Jedi power versus Teams, Microsoft Teams rooms? Do a POC. Have them and here's what I always say. Deploy 5 rooms. Deploy 5 Microsoft Teams rooms. Deploy 5 Zoom rooms. You tell me the difference. The point is, it's the cost of day 0, day 1, day 2. We'll talk about that if you haven't heard me say those terms. It's the cost of UCaaS. Again, not the point of this conversation, but the cost of UCaaS is more than the cost of the license. Zoom Rooms effectively makes administering, deploying rooms easier than Microsoft Teams Rooms. Have them try it. Choice. No longer do we live in the 80s and 90s draconian world of IT. Right? In the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, here's what IT would do. I was part of IT, so I know this. We would push something out to our customers. Our customers are our users, right? Our end users. We'd push something out. You're like, that's what you get. For the next 3 to 5 years, that's what you get. That's what we bought. That's what you get. Whether you like it or not, that's what you get. And unfortunately, in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, we didn't have choice. We just had to use what IT gave us. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I did not walk around with an iPhone. This is not one of those grandfather stories of how hard I had it as a kid. No, that's not what I'm saying. I didn't walk around with an iPhone or a phone, or I didn't have a desktop or a laptop. I didn't have a computer until I went to college. That wasn't a choice of mine. I didn't have choice. Today, Gartner says 70% of the workforce is millennials and younger. What did millennials grow up with? And younger, right? From my Generation Z? I can't remember. Millennials and younger grew up with iPhones and iPads. Millennials and younger grew up with desktops and laptops. Millennials and younger grew up with iPads and computers and technology around them all the time. They had choice of hardware. They also had choice of software. When you have your phone, how many apps do you have on this phone? Right? How many apps do you have? 100? I don't know. Doesn't really matter. You have the choice. You can choose. You're not having those pushed down from IT. You picked Candy Crush because that's your favorite game. It's my favorite game, by the way. I know. Candy Crush. It's fantastic. I'm on level like 3,000. I'm not bragging. Maybe a little. The point is you had choice. You chose what applications are on your phone. And in today's world, I talk to a lot of CIOs and a lot of CTOs. You know what their job is? It's to give choice. Why? Remember the second slide? Different workflows, different needs. Steve in sales has different needs than Bob in accounting has different needs than Susie in HR. They have different workflows. They're going to use different tools. They're going to need choice. Teams does not work 100% for everyone all the time on every user persona. You're going to have choice. And if you don't give it to Steve in sales, guess what he's going to do? He's just going to go get it himself. He's going to use whatever tool he needs to hit his quota. Every customer-facing employee of any company is going to use the tool that best lets them get their job done. Think about support. When you're in support, you're helping customers probably outside of your organization. What tool works best for you when you're supporting somebody? You want to share your screen, right? Zoom. Think about that. Every external facing or revenue generating communication level, you're probably going to need Zoom for that choice. And you're choosing Teams for internal, Zoom for external. You're giving choice. Do you have to use Teams for everything internal? No. You can use Zoom. Do you have to use Zoom for everything external? No. You could use a worse tool. You could use Teams if you really wanted to. You won't, but you could. That's choice. Use whatever tool works best for you. That's your job as a CIO, CTO. Give choice. Give them the opportunity. We're not talking about cost. We're talking about choice. Cost certainly factors in, and we can have that discussion later on, but this is not the point of the video. The point is, how do Microsoft Teams and Zoom work together? That's how. This really isn't Microsoft Teams and Zoom working together. And now that I actually have this slide, I might take it out. But I love the innovation from Zoom. That's why it's so powerful. We have a faster innovation roadmap and strategy than Microsoft does. I used to work for Microsoft. Sometimes we would announce things and wouldn't even have it deployed for like 2 years. We talk about it for 2 years. We were talking about innovation for 2 years, but we wouldn't deploy it for 2 years. We wouldn't deliver it for 2 years sometimes longer. It's crazy. Think about what Zoom and how we handle innovation. When we announce something, it's because we've probably already been working on it. We probably already have a game plan for it. It's probably already in beta. Our philosophy on innovation is drastically different than Microsoft. And again, this complements each other from a UCaaS perspective. Webinars, breakout rooms, 49 screen galleries, pictures. All these are functions. We don't sell with functions. We sell with platform and ecosystem. The point is, those are all innovation things that we have done ahead of the competition. And the reason you don't sell on function is just because people are going to just copy it. So you could sell, and I even heard people try to sell 49 panels on one Zoom screen. You're like, great. Microsoft's going to have that soon. And so will Google, and so will Facebook. That's why we don't sell functions. We sell platforms. We sell ecosystems. But part of that story is innovation. And I'm actually proud that Microsoft that copies everything that Zoom does. It means we're doing it right. It means we're on the right path. Innovation. Whoa, look at how nerdy that looks. Get, push, oh my God, change, select. That's nerd stuff right there. Beautiful. Let's have a nerd discussion. I'm kind of a nerd. All of us have internal nerds, right? All of us have nerds inside of us. Geeks, maybe. Zoom apps is changing the way we deliver UCaaS. Zoom apps, there's kind of different flavors of Zoom apps, right? There's Zoom apps from the marketplace. There's Zoom in-meeting apps. And then there's open API SDKs from the Zoom development side of the house. All those complete the development talk and the development discussion. Why is that important? I think you probably know. How many applications are in our Zoom marketplace? Last I looked, there was around 1,900. It's probably even more than that now that you're watching this video. 1,900 companies have written apps that fit into the Zoom ecosystem. And let's go with that direction. You can write apps that fit in to the Zoom ecosystem. Full disclosure, you can write apps that fit into the Microsoft Teams ecosystem as well. And a lot of these are the same. SurveyMonkey, Poly, stuff like that, right? Even Prezi works for both platforms. The point is that we open those APIs and SDKs to a level that Microsoft doesn't. Microsoft's very siloed in this world. You can write into their system. You can't write them into yours. But guess what you can do with Zoom? Zoom has a different philosophy on apps, right? You want to write into our marketplace? Knock yourself out. You want to write an in-meeting app? Knock yourself out. You want to write Zoom into yours and to put video into your application? Go ahead. You want to put audio into your application? Go ahead. We don't care. We're agnostic. Microsoft has a different philosophy here. They would never let that happen. They're a closed ecosystem. Do they have APIs and SDKs? Yes. What are they doing? They're calling their stuff, not yours. They're calling Microsoft stuff, not yours. A different philosophy here, different development strategy here than we have at Microsoft. Full disclosure, Microsoft does have in-meeting apps too. It's very constricted, very siloed, not very innovative. They actually had it before Zoom. But Zoom apps is really changing how we deliver this philosophy, this Zoom app API and SDK discussion. Again, a difference in how we view this. I'll give you a quick example. Who remembers Windows Phone? Who remember the Windows Phone? Windows Phone and Nokia phones. Remember all those phones back in the day? I had one because I worked for Microsoft. They gave it to me. So pretty much anybody that had a Windows Phone probably worked at Microsoft. Had a better camera than iPhone and Android. Had better speakers. It was better hardware. But it failed. It failed miserably. I think Microsoft even paid like $4 billion for Nokia. Boom, gone. Why did it fail? It wasn't the hardware. It was their development philosophy. iPhone succeeded because it had an open philosophy. Android succeeds because it has an open philosophy. Write all you want into their APIs and SDKs. Knock yourself out. Microsoft didn't have that philosophy. Microsoft was closed. You chose iPhone because you could play Doodle Jump on it and Candy Crush. Because you could check your checking account at Bank of America. You could book airlines on American Airlines. Like all these companies that we work and use in our day-to-day life, we need to have from our mobile computer, our mobile device. We need to be able to access all these things. You could do that in the iPhone world. You couldn't do that in the Microsoft Windows world, Microsoft phone world. It failed. Because why? Users want choice. It's that simple. And we deliver it to them with our development ring. Integrations. It kind of falls in line with APIs, right? We do a lot of integration. Zoom is agnostic when it comes to integration. You want to work on a Mac? Knock yourself out. You want to work on Windows? Knock yourself out. Android? Knock yourself out. Linux? Knock yourself out. You want to deploy Zoom rooms with Mac hardware? Go ahead. Don't care. You want to use a Sennheiser microphone? That's not, or in a Logitech camera? Don't care. Go ahead. In the Microsoft world, there's no integrations like that. You can integrate into them. They're not integrating into you. You want to use their hardware? You better use Microsoft approved hardware. You can't use your own. You have to use Microsoft certified hardware. We won't work. That's actually not true. They just won't support it, but you get the point. Integrations is a different philosophy than we have here at Zoom. Events. Zoom events. Game changer here. Right? No longer are we going to Vegas for 5 days for conferences. Right? You stay out late, maybe gamble a little too much, grab that Starbucks, that red eye, maybe a double. Hopefully you can make that 8 a.m. meeting, right? We're probably not doing that anytime soon holistically from the world, right? We're going to do it a little bit, right, as we get back into it. But we've changed our philosophy on events. We're going toward a hybrid event model, flexible event model. We still need events. We still need conferences. But now, what if we're a team shop and we need to hold a conference? What are we going to use? You're not using Teams. Why? Because they don't have an events platform. Will they? Maybe. UCaaS, remember collaboration communication. UCaaS now complements each other with Zoom and Teams because now we can use Zoom events for all our events usage. That's pretty important because now we can have a complete UCaaS stack discussion and include Zoom in that discussion, a platform discussion, an ecosystem discussion. Microsoft can't do this. You need Zoom to do it. Zoom events. What does this even mean? What does that even mean? Operational readiness is what it means. That's the best logo I could come up with. That's a GIF, sticker, whatever you want to call it. Operational readiness. Back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, what operational readiness used to be called disaster recovery or business continuity or backup plan. I don't care. Whatever you want to call it. Operational readiness. Another name for it. You can use whatever term you like. I'm using it operational readiness today. Operational readiness back in the 80s and 90s. My first job, by the way, my first IT job was at ESPN. And my boss said, hey, go build an email server. And I did. And he's like, what happens if it breaks? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you build another one. So now you have 2 email servers. And they're in building A, right? Data center A. 2 email servers in data center A. And you can build 3 and 4 and 5. The whole point is you have high availability in data center A because if one of those servers breaks, the other one gets in the line. What happens if data center A goes away? On fire, hurricane, whatever, goes away. Power loss. Now, what do? What's your operational readiness plan? In the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, it was data center B. Guess what? So I'm going to build 10 servers, email servers at data center A. And if data center A goes down, I'm going to build 10 more email servers at data center B. So now I have 20 email servers for high availability and disaster recovery. In 2 different geographic areas, on 2 different networks, with 2 different sets of hardware, all to have operational readiness. How do we do it today, though, with the cloud? How do we do operational readiness today? That's the hint, the cloud, right? Operational readiness. So what if you have 2 maybe UCaaS providers that complete your stack? What if you're using Teams for collaboration and Zoom for communication? And let's fictitiously say, what if Teams went down for 13 hours last March? Fictitious. I'm just saying. What if that were to happen fictitiously? Teams went down for 13 hours last March. What was your operational readiness plan as an enterprise? Acme Contoso Corporation. What was your operational readiness plan when you owned just Teams? The IT guy's like, I'm going to call Microsoft. And Microsoft's going to say, yeah, you're about the 100 millionth caller. We're working on it. Is that good enough for your CIO? Is that what your CIO is going to tell the CEO? Like, hey, we can't really have any meetings or make any phone calls right now because Teams is down. And the CEO's going to go, what are you doing to work on it? You're like, well, we called and opened the ticket. That's not a plan. Readiness means you have a backup plan immediately, real time. And what could it be? I've talked to companies that actually have Teams as their primary collaboration tool, Zoom as their primary communication tool, and let's be real honest, should one of them go down, you have the other one as backup. That's operational readiness in 2022. If you haven't seen the uptime on Zoom last year, you'll see that it was close to 100% on every single modality. Teams can't touch that. So if you're going to use Teams for your collaboration tool set, you better have an operational readiness plan and set to rock and roll, because it's going to go down. And if you are depending on all your collaboration and communication needs from Teams, and that's how you're generating revenue, you better have a damn well good reason why you don't have an operational readiness plan like Zoom. No, I don't have any questions. What? Do you have any questions? There's no one in the meeting, so I guess not. I hope that was helpful. I hope you learned something from this exercise. This is a story you better be able to tell of why do you need Teams and Zoom together to effectively complete your UCaaS stack. I just walked through a whole bunch of workflows and use cases on how Zoom adds business value, on how Zoom adds user value, on how Zoom completes your UCaaS stack. Notice we didn't even talk about digital signage or call center. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but this is the basic story that you need to tell a customer of why do I need Zoom when I already own Teams. Now you got the answer.